That's what I whispered to my husband, Tom, as we sat on the front porch of our small, clay brick house in Ghana, listening to the sound of crickets and distant drums under the starlit sky. Our children were playing barefoot in the yard, laughing with the neighbors' kids. It was the kind of joy we hadn't seen in them for years, not since the weight of our old lives in America had pressed so heavily on us. But our story didn't start here, not under these peaceful skies. It started with us crying in our car, in a Walmart parking lot back in Ohio. Tom and I had been chasing the American dream for as long as we could remember. We had good jobs, a 3-bedroom house in the suburbs, and a packed schedule of soccer practices, PTA meetings, and overtime at work. But no matter how much we earned, it was never enough. Debt piled up. The kids, Amy and Ben, were glued to their screens, distant and moody. We were always tired, always rushing. The breaking point came one evening when Tom called me from his office. He'd just been denied a vacation request for the 3rd year in a row. He'd been working 60-hour weeks, missing dinners and birthdays, and now the thought of another year without a break crushed him. "We can't keep living like this," he said, his voice cracking. I wanted to tell him everything would be okay, but I didn't believe it myself. That night, as we sat in our car after another exhausting shopping trip, Tom said, "What if we just left? What if we started over somewhere else?" At first, I laughed. Then I cried. And then, somehow, the idea didn't seem so crazy. It started as a joke, "Let's move to Africa." But Tom was serious. We'd always been fascinated by African culture. I'd studied it briefly in college, and Tom had co-workers from Ghana and Kenya who spoke fondly of their homelands. We spent weeks researching. What we found was a way of life that felt almost mythical, strong community bonds, slower living, and a connection to nature that seemed impossible in our concrete jungle. But could we really do it? We sold the house, downsized to what we could carry, and said goodbye to our skeptical friends and family. "You'll be back in 6 months," Tom's mother warned. But we didn't listen. We chose Ghana because it was one of the most welcoming countries for expatriates, and because of its rich culture. Arriving in Accra was a shock. The heat was overwhelming, the streets chaotic, and the unfamiliarity daunting. But people smiled at us, offered help when we looked lost, and shared stories that made us feel welcome. We rented a modest home in a village outside Kumasi, surrounded by lush greenery, and a rhythm of life that was entirely new to us. At first, it was hard. We missed air conditioning, fast internet, and the predictability of life in America. But gradually, something changed. In the mornings, we woke to the sound of roosters and the scent of fresh bread from the local bakery. The kids started attending a small school, where they learned not only math and science, but also how to drum, weave, and speak Chi. Our neighbors became like family. Every evening, we sat together, sharing meals and stories. The sense of community was something we'd never experienced before. When someone needed help, people came. When there was a celebration, everyone joined in. Tom found work teaching English at a nearby school, while I started a small business selling handmade jewelry, inspired by the vibrant colors and patterns of local designs. We earned less money than we ever had in America, but somehow, we felt richer. It's been 3 years now. We've visited the US once since moving, and while it was nice to see family, we felt like strangers in our own country. The noise, the rush, the endless advertisements, it all felt overwhelming. Life in Ghana isn't perfect. We've had our challenges with power outages, cultural misunderstandings, and moments of homesickness. But we've also learned to appreciate the beauty of simplicity, the value of community, and the joy of living fully in the present. As I sat on that porch, watching the kids run and laugh, I thought about the life we left behind. America gave us many things, but it also took much from us. Here, we found what we didn't even know we were missing: peace. We did the right thing, I said softly. Tom squeezed my hand and smiled. We really did. One of the things I've come to love about living in Ghana is the rain. Back in America, it was a nuisance, another reason to grumble during my morning commute or cancel plans. Here, it's a gift. The first heavy rain we experienced was a revelation. It wasn't just water falling from the sky, it was an event. The village transformed. Children ran out to play, dancing and splashing in the muddy puddles. Women brought out buckets to catch the rainwater, laughing and chatting as they worked. The air smelled fresh, earthy, alive. That day, I found myself standing in the downpour, letting it soak through my hair and clothes. Amy and Ben joined me, their squeals of delight carrying over the rhythmic drumming of raindrops on tin roofs. For the first time in years, I felt weightless, like all the burdens I'd carried for so long were being washed away. Come inside before you catch a cold, a neighbor called, grinning as she waved us over to her porch. We spent the next hour sitting with her family, sipping hot tea made from fresh ginger and cloves, listening to their stories of village life. Back in Ohio, success had always been measured by numbers, how much we earned, how big our house was, how prestigious our jobs sounded. But here, success looks different. It's a neighbor bringing over a bowl of jollof rice when they notice you are having a hard day. It's the way the community rallies together to fix a road or organize a festival. I remember one moment that solidified this shift for me. It was during a funeral, a massive, colorful affair that lasted for days. Funerals here are not just a time to mourn, they are also a celebration of life, a chance to honor the deceased with joy and music. Tom and I joined in, wearing the traditional black and red cloth. As we sat among hundreds of villagers, watching the drummers and dancers, I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time, belonging. In that moment, I realized that success wasn't about climbing some endless ladder. It was about community, connection, and living a life that felt meaningful. Of course, there have been hard days. We've had to learn how to navigate the complexities of a new culture, figuring out local customs, dealing with bureaucracy, and sometimes feeling like outsiders. There was the time our generator broke down during a week-long power outage, and we had to cook by candlelight and bathe with water we hauled from a nearby well. The kids whined at first, but by the end of the week, they'd learned how to help start the fire and find constellations in the clear night sky. Then there was the time Amy got sick with malaria. It was terrifying, but the village rallied around us. The local nurse stayed with us through the night, making sure Amy was comfortable, while neighbors brought herbal remedies and prayers. She recovered quickly, and we learned how to be better prepared. Every challenge has taught us something, about resilience, about gratitude, and about the strength of human connection. Sometimes I wonder if we'll stay here forever. The kids are growing up fast, and I know they'll eventually want to explore the world beyond this village. Tom and I talk about the possibility of moving to another part of Africa, or even returning to the US someday. But for now, this is home. When people back in America ask why we made the move, I tell them this: we didn't abandon anything, we chose something better for us. A life where we wake up to the sound of birds instead of alarms. Where our kids know what it means to truly play, to make friends without screens, and to appreciate the beauty of small things. We are not trying to escape the modern world, we are just trying to live fully in it. And here, in this little village under the African sky, we've found the freedom to do just that. As I sit here, watching another golden sunset, and listening to the sound of drums in the distance, I can't help but smile. Life isn't perfect, but it's ours, and for that, I am endlessly grateful.
About a year ago, we had our first visitors from the States, Tom's younger sister, Karen, and her teenage son, Matt. Karen had always been curious about our decision to leave America but hadn't said much beyond the occasional email. When she called to say she wanted to visit, we were excited but nervous. Karen had always been a big city person, living in New York, juggling a high-powered job, and raising her son in a whirlwind of extracurricular activities and private schools. We weren't sure how she'd react to the simplicity of our life here. When they arrived, it was clear they were out of their element. The heat, the bumpy roads, the lack of Wi-Fi, it all seemed overwhelming at first. Karen looked around our modest home and asked, "How do you do it? How do you live like this?" I just smiled and said, "Give it time." At first, Matt refused to leave the house. He clung to his phone, searching in vain for a decent signal. Karen spent the first few days fretting, asking if we were sure the water was safe and if the food would upset her stomach. But then something shifted. It started with the kids in the village. They noticed Matt sitting on the porch, looking miserable, and invited him to play soccer. At first, he waved them off, but they kept coming back, persistent and full of laughter. Finally, he gave in. Within days, he was running barefoot in the dirt, laughing louder than I'd ever seen him laugh before. Karen, too, began to relax. She joined me on trips to the market, marveling at the vibrant fabrics and the energy of the bustling stalls. One afternoon, she helped our neighbor prepare fufu, pounding the cassava and plantains with a wooden pestle. By the end of the week, she was greeting people in tree and dancing at a village celebration, her inhibitions melting away. One evening, after the kids had gone to bed, Karen and I sat outside under the stars. She sipped the ginger tea she'd come to love and said, "I get it now. I see why you came here." She talked about how tired she was of the rat race, the constant pressure to keep up, the feeling that no matter how much she achieved, it was never enough. "Matt's been happier here in 1 week than I've seen him in years," she admitted. And honestly, so have I. Before they left, Karen told us she was considering taking a sabbatical from work. She wanted to spend more time with Matt and focus on things that really mattered. It was a small shift, but I could see the spark of change in her eyes. Their visit reminded me of how far we'd come. We still had moments when we missed the conveniences of our old life, grocery stores stocked with everything, fast internet, the ability to drive anywhere without worrying about potholes. But those things felt small compared to what we'd gained. Our children were growing up surrounded by love, learning the importance of community and self-reliance. They knew the names of the people who sold us our vegetables, the stories behind the music we danced to, and the taste of food prepared with care and tradition. Tom and I were closer than ever, having built a life together from the ground up. Our marriage had weathered the storms of change, and we'd come out stronger, more grateful for the quiet joys we now shared. Sometimes, late at night, I think about what our story might mean for our children. Would they stay here, embracing this way of life, or would they return to America, carrying pieces of this experience with them? Whatever they choose, I know they'll carry the lessons we've learned here, that happiness isn't something you buy, that true wealth comes from connection, and that life's greatest treasures are often found in the simplest moments. As I sit on our porch tonight, listening to the hum of the village and feeling the cool breeze on my skin, I think about the journey that brought us here. It wasn't always easy, but it was worth it. We traded the chaos of America for the rhythm of Africa, and in doing so, we found ourselves. Over time, we stopped measuring our lives in milestones. There were no promotions to chase, no shiny new gadgets to buy. Instead, our lives revolved around seasons and traditions. The planting season brought early mornings in the field, while the rainy season invited warm evenings around the fire, listening to the elders share stories. Amy and Ben thrived in ways I hadn't imagined. Amy became fascinated with the local herbs and remedies, often shadowing the village healer to learn their uses. "I want to be a doctor one day," she announced proudly at dinner one evening. Ben, on the other hand, discovered a knack for woodworking. A neighbor taught him how to carve intricate patterns into stools and masks, and his work became so admired that people began placing small orders. Watching our children grow into themselves without the constant noise of advertisements and distractions felt like a gift. Tom, too, found his rhythm. His teaching job expanded into mentoring young adults who wanted to learn English to pursue higher education or business opportunities. It gave him a sense of purpose that his corporate job in America never had. And me? I rediscovered parts of myself I hadn't realized I'd lost. I spent hours creating jewelry inspired by local designs, blending my creativity with the vibrant culture around me. I started writing again, documenting our journey in a way that felt cathartic and meaningful. But not everything was perfect. There were moments when we felt the pull of America, the friends and family we missed, the convenience of modern life, and the lingering question of whether we'd made the right choice. Would Amy and Ben have opportunities to pursue their dreams here? Would they resent us for uprooting them from the life they might have had? We wrestled with these questions quietly, not wanting to let our doubts overshadow the beauty of what we'd built. Every so often, an email from a friend back home would bring news of rising costs, political tensions, or how busy everyone still seemed. It reminded us why we'd left but didn't erase the ache of being far away. Last year, we saved up to visit America for the first time since our move. Amy and Ben were excited to see their cousins, but Tom and I approached the trip with caution. From the moment we landed, it was clear how much we changed. The pace of life felt overwhelming, the noise, the traffic, the constant need to be somewhere or do something. The kids were initially dazzled by the malls, amusement parks, and fast food. But after a week, they started asking to go back. "It's too much," Ben said one evening. "I miss the quiet." Amy missed the sense of freedom she had in the village, where she could roam safely and spend her days exploring. "Everything here feels so busy," she said, echoing a sentiment Tom and I had struggled to articulate for years. When we returned to Ghana, stepping off the plane felt like a breath of fresh air. The familiar warmth of the sun, the smiles of neighbors who greeted us like family, it reminded us that home isn't a place. It's a feeling.